Breaking tonight, Washington's Greenland gambit just exposed the exact chaos Canada has been preparing for. Trump didn't just threaten allies, he validated every strategic decision Ottawa has made in the past year. Tensions are exploding across the Atlantic tonight. America threatened 10% tariffs on 8 European nations over territorial demands. But instead of capitulation, NATO allies deployed troops to defend Danish sovereignty. And Canada, watching this unfold, just saw confirmation that every instinct about American unreliability was absolutely correct. Everyone believed NATO solidarity would prevent intra-alliance threats. Financial markets expected traditional partnerships to hold. Analysts assumed America would never weaponize trade against its closest European allies over an island that isn't for sale. They were all utterly incorrect. Washington, January 18th, 2026. Standing at a White House healthcare event, Donald Trump made a statement that shattered transatlantic trust. I may put a tariff on countries if they don't go along with Greenland, because we need Greenland for national security. Translation: the United States just told its NATO partners that American demands override alliance commitments, sovereignty is negotiable, and economic warfare is the new diplomacy. And what happened next? The country that built resilient strategies, diversified trade relationships, and refused to bet everything on American stability reveals exactly why Canadian independence is the only rational strategy, while Washington's credibility collapses in real time. Dear viewers, this is Canada Next, and between January 16th and 18th, 2026, something extraordinary happened that every Canadian needs to understand. America threatened its closest allies with economic sanctions over territorial conquest. Europe responded by defending Danish sovereignty with military deployments. And Canada, strategic and patient Canada, watched from across the Atlantic as every warning about American unpredictability became undeniable fact. This isn't just about one chaotic tariff threat. This is about the fundamental validation of Canada's entire strategic pivot away from American dependency and towards sovereign resilience. Let me show you exactly what happened and why it matters for Canadian independence. Here's the timeline that proves everything. January 16th, a bipartisan U.S. congressional delegation arrives in Copenhagen, desperately trying to reassure Denmark and Greenland that America can still be trusted. Senator Chris Coons tells Danish officials there is a lot of rhetoric, but there is not a lot of reality in the current discussion in Washington. Translation: America's own Congress doesn't believe their president anymore. They're conducting shadow foreign policy behind the executive branch's back because presidential credibility has completely collapsed. That exact same day, while Congress is in Copenhagen trying to lower the temperature, Trump stands at a White House healthcare event and openly threatens tariffs against any country that opposes American acquisition of Greenland. Not hours later, not days later, the exact same day. Then on Saturday, January 18th, he made it official via Truth Social, announcing 10% tariffs on 8 European nations starting February 1st, escalating to 25% by June unless Denmark sells Greenland. Think about what that means. The American government is so fractured, so internally contradictory, that one branch flies to Europe to promise stability, while another branch simultaneously threatens economic warfare. This isn't policy disagreement. This is institutional collapse. Denmark's response was immediate and decisive. They deployed additional troops to Greenland. France sent 15 mountain specialists. Germany sent 13 soldiers. Sweden, Norway, Finland, and the Netherlands all contributed forces. These aren't massive deployments, these are symbolic statements. NATO allies are preparing to defend Danish territory from the United States. Read that sentence again. NATO allies defending a NATO member from American threats. This is unprecedented. This is the Atlantic Alliance fundamentally broken. Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Rasmussen emerged from White House meetings stating there remains a fundamental disagreement and that Trump still has the wish of conquering Greenland. When your foreign minister has to publicly clarify that your territory is not for sale to your supposed ally, something has gone catastrophically wrong with the relationship. Now let's talk about why this matters for Canadian economic strategy. When you analyze trade data seriously, Trump's tariff regime is economic self-destruction dressed up as national security. The numbers are devastating. According to St. Louis Federal Reserve analysis, tariffs accounted for 0.5 percentage points of American headline inflation between June and August 2025. Over 12 months ending August 2025, tariffs explain 10.9% of America's total annual inflation. More than 1/10 of the price increases Americans are experiencing comes directly from Trump's trade war. Yale Budget Lab calculated that American consumers now face an average effective tariff rate of 16.8%, the highest since 1935. The cost? Average American households lost $3,800 in purchasing power in 2024. JP Morgan estimated tariffs boosted consumer prices by 1% to 1.5% in 2025 alone. But here's the mechanism that matters for Canadian planning. Throughout 2025, American businesses absorbed roughly 80% of tariff costs to avoid raising consumer prices. They depleted inventory stockpiles. They ate the losses. According to industry consultants, that's about to reverse in 2026. Businesses are now passing costs directly to consumers. Kyle Peacock of Peacock Tariff Consulting states, "A lot of our clients really didn't want to pass the cost on, but now they're really having to." Many businesses are implementing price increases immediately at the start of 2026. What does this mean financially? PIMCO's analysis estimated only 40% to 50% of tariff costs were passed to consumers in 2025, lifting core inflation by 0.4 to 0.5 percentage points. If that ratio flips, if consumers start absorbing 80% instead of 20%, we're looking at doubling or tripling the inflationary impact from tariffs in 2026. And now, Trump wants to add more tariffs on America's closest European allies over a territorial dispute that even 75% of Americans oppose, according to CNN polling. This isn't strategy. This is economic suicide. Yale Budget Lab modeling shows Trump's tariffs reduce U.S. real GDP growth by 0.5 percentage points in 2025 and 0.4 percentage points in 2026. Long term, the American economy will be persistently 0.3% smaller, equivalent to $90 billion annually in lost economic output. U.S. exports are down 60% in the long run. This is where Canadian strategic thinking becomes crystal clear. While America threatens Denmark, Canada just announced a deal with China to cut tariffs on canola. While Washington alienates NATO allies, Ottawa diversifies trade relationships. The contrast couldn't be sharper. Canada looked at American unpredictability and made a decision. We cannot bet our entire economic future on a partner this erratic. We cannot assume alliance commitments will be honored. We cannot build resilience on the foundation of American stability because that stability no longer exists. Every trade diversification effort Canada has pursued, every conversation with non-American partners, every strategic investment in sovereign capacity was building toward this exact moment. When American credibility collapses, when traditional alliances fracture, when economic warfare becomes standard American policy, Canada needs alternatives. Senator Lisa Murkowski told reporters that Greenland needs to be viewed as our ally, not as an asset. That statement alone shouldn't need to be said in a functional alliance. But here we are with American senators having to remind their president that sovereign territories aren't commodities for purchase. Denmark's foreign minister pointed out the absurdity perfectly. "I think there's no way that the U.S. will pay for a Scandinavian welfare system in Greenland. Honestly speaking, you haven't introduced a Scandinavian welfare system in your own country. America can't provide healthcare to its own citizens, but demands Denmark hand over territory with comprehensive social services. The logic doesn't work. The power dynamics don't work anymore. And there's a Supreme Court case pending that could invalidate Trump's most sweeping tariffs entirely. The case challenges his use of emergency economic powers. If the court rules against the administration, businesses could receive refunds on $130 billion in tariffs already paid." Trump himself posted on Truth Social that a negative decision would mean, in his words, "we're screwed." When the American president is publicly freaking out about a Supreme Court case that could dismantle his entire economic strategy, that's not strength. That's desperation. And Canada is watching very carefully. First, expect more tariff threats and more backdowns. Markets even coined the term taco. Trump always chickens out because he repeatedly threatens massive tariffs, then quietly adds exemptions when economic damage becomes undeniable. He already delayed tariffs on furniture, cabinets, and Italian pasta at the start of 2026 with no explanation. Second, watch for continued diplomatic isolation. When France, Germany, and 4 other European nations send troops to defend a NATO ally from American threats, The Atlantic Alliance is fundamentally broken. This isn't rhetoric. This is military positioning. Third, monitor inflation data closely. If businesses pass through 70% to 80% of tariff costs to consumers in 2026 as expected, American inflation will spike again, eroding what's left of consumer purchasing power. Morningstar forecast inflation rising to 2.7% in 2026, with durable prices up 4.5% and non-durables up 5.6% cumulatively through 2027. Fourth, expect more countries to follow Canada's example and cut deals with China. When the United States weaponizes trade relationships, other nations diversify away from American markets. That's not ideology, that's risk assessment. That's survival strategy. The pattern here is undeniable. A declining hegemon making increasingly erratic threats backed by an economy that can't sustain those threats, while allies openly question American judgment and rivals fill the vacuum. For Canada, this is validation. Every strategic decision to reduce American dependency, every trade relationship diversified beyond Washington, every investment in the sovereign capacity looks prescient right now. While America threatens its closest allies over territorial conquest, Canada builds partnerships based on mutual respect and economic benefit. Greenland isn't about national security. It's about rare earth minerals, shipping routes, and attempting to project strength from a position of weakness. The problem is everyone can see the weakness now. Even Congress can see it, which is why they're conducting shadow foreign policy behind the president's back when your own government has to go around you to reassure allies. The empire isn't just declining, it's fragmenting from within. And for Canada, watching from across the border, this is the moment everything becomes clear. The choice Canada faces isn't whether to maintain alliance commitments, it's how to build resilience in a world where American reliability can no longer be assumed. It's how to navigate a fracturing international system where traditional partners threaten each other with economic warfare over territorial demands. This isn't about choosing sides, it's about choosing sovereignty. It's about building the capacity to weather American chaos without betting everything on American stability. It's about recognizing that resilience isn't built on dependence, no matter how traditional that dependence might be. The Greenland tariff threat just proved that Canadian strategic independence isn't optional anymore. It's essential. And every nation watching this unfold is learning the exact same lesson Canada started learning months ago. When America becomes unpredictable, survival requires alternatives. Stay informed, stay resilient, and remember that sovereignty isn't given, it's built. One strategic decision at a time, one diversified relationship at a time. One investment in Canadian capacity at a time. That's how nations survive the chaos of declining empires. That's how Canada moves from reliance to resilience, and that's exactly what we're doing right now.